that maybe a bas should also be included in a ben Sarimur. There should be a bas Sarimur. And the reason why Rab Shimon suggested that she should be included is because it's even easier for her to get a hold of illicit money if she cannot fulfill her tithes. As Rashi says at the top of Daf Ayin Amud Aleph, she'll start selling herself. That's a lot easier to do than just killing somebody. So Mamela, Fakert, if anything, we need to protect her al Shem Soifa even more. Kamash Malon ben V'leibas. So there's two different Meforshim who tell us that this is Reb Shimon L'Shitase. There's the Maratz who tells us that Reb Shimon holds Darshin and Time of the Krah. Darshin and Time of the Krah doesn't mean we try to understand what the pasuk says. Everybody holds like that. But Reb Shimon holds that if you determine the svara behind the mitzvah, you can use that svara to determine when the mitzvah applies or when it doesn't apply. You can use it halacha. So Reb Shimon, who holds Darshin Time of the Krah, says that misvara, the basar emer should be even more than the ben emer, because it's easier for her to do these types of things, and therefore you need a pasuk to tell you ben v'loy bas. But the Meshech Chochma, I think it was in Pasha Kisete that Rabbi Rosner quoted from, says we know Reb Shimon holds that hereg is less severe than chenek. So hereg is the least severe misa. Then comes chenek, right? Then comes skila. Then comes shreifa, right? He has the opposite. So let's think a second. Someone who is a mediach, the Gemara says, according to Shimon, gets chenek. Someone who is a hudach, someone who gets pushed off the derech, gets herek, right? That's what the Iridachas gets. So who gets the worst punishment, according to Reb Shimon? The person who influenced others. Oh, Zok Reb Shimon, here, if someone's killing somebody, so they're just hurting them. But if she's going to lure somebody into doing a avera with her, so she's a machti. A machti is worse. So again, it's Reb Shimon L'Shitase. Reb Shimon L'Shitase, who holds that a machti is worse, you should think, if anything, a bas should be included in the halacha ben Tzayir Moyer, Kamash Malon ben V'leibas. Okay. Zok to Gemara. At what point do we say that this Ben Tzayir Moyer ate too much, and because of that, he is going to be condemned? We don't know at this point how much that is. We know what it is. What type of wine ho'italki, which Rashi says is toiv umu'ulahu umamshich basrei. It's a very good wine, which could be, I guess, considered addictive. It makes you want to drink more. Rabbi Yosy Omer, you have to drink a lot more. It's mona, basar, and a lug yayin. The Gemara is going to say the same way Rabbi Yosy doubles up on the yayin. Probably a mona is 2 tartimers. So a tartimer is probably a chatzi mona. That's what the Gemara is going to say. Ochal b'chaburas mitzvah. What if this eating was in the chabur of mitzvah? Rashi says b'sudas mitzvah. Ochal a tartimer zeh. Afilu gon v'mishalav. Even if he stole this meat from his father, but he was eating it in a sudas mitzvah. Or ochal be'iber achodesh, as Rashi teaches, v'chenim ochli b'minyan shoyu nikbotzim la'aber achodesh. There was a minyan that they gathered together. We're going to soon see they would gather when they added a day to the month. They had to publicize it, so they would make a suda for at least 10 people, so it should be known that something's going on, which would publicize the fact that they added a day to the month. Gam sham hayu oisim sudas, or achol meiser sheni b'Yerushalayim. And Rashi says v'chein kulam afal b'shagon v'mishalav potter, and the Gemara is going to explain why eating meiser sheni is not going to make him in to a Ben Tzayir Moyer, or achol nevelais utreifos shkatzim vermos. Why should that not make him into a Ben Tzayir Moyer? Avol, I'm saying achol davar shu mitzvah, v'davar shu avera. Anything that he ate that would have been a mitzvah or would have been an avera, all those don't make him into a Ben Tzayir Moyer. Achol kol meichel v'loy achol basar. He could have eaten up anything, but he didn't eat meat. Or shasa kol mashke v'loy shasa yayin, then einay nasa ben Tzayir Moyer at sheyachol basar v'yishta yayin. Shenema, the pasuk says that the Bensorim Mori has to be Zoylel v'Soivei. That it means meat, Zeichel Dover. Shenema Alti b'Soivei Yayin b'Zoylel Basar Lomai. So you see from a pasuk that Zoylel refers to Basar and Soivei refers to Yayin, as Rashi says. V'Alva b'Shein Rayel Dover. The Dilma Michael Achrinim Nami Karel Zoylel. Umiu Shloima Ashare Shloima Melech warned not to do these things. The Mimshech Tfei, because they lure somebody in. Zeichel davar the bebasar mikri zoylel ubeyayin mikri soivei. Zok the heilige Gemara weiter. Reb Zeir said, Tartimer zeh ein yidei mahu. I wouldn't know normally what this shear is. However, el mitoich shekafal Reb Yosy biyayin, since Reb Yosy holds that you need a double of the shear that the Chachamim said for wine, let's assume that koifel ach basar v'nimtzet tartimer is a chatzima. Amar Reb Chanan bar Mulda. Mulda was the name of a person. Shem Lova was the name of it. I'm not sure if it's Mulda, if it's Moilada. Does the article say that I punctuate it? Moilada. Amar Rav Huna. Einei chayiv at sheyikach basar bezoil. He had to have gotten a good price on the meat. It had to be cheap. V'yoichal yain bezoil. It had to have been cheap. V'yishta. The chsiv zoilel v'soivei miloshen zoil is cheap. Rashi says zoilel loshen zoil. Let's go back one Rashi. Yain bezoil. Aval b'yoker, if it was very expensive, loy shchichi leimois lignaiv kula hai v'loy mimsha. He won't even be able to steal enough money. It would be difficult to steal enough money to be able to buy such expensive products. So it had to be that with like a cheap theft, like a pickpocket, he'll be able to find the money to buy these things. But if there's such quality items that you'd have to rob a bank, never mind just do a petty theft, in order to be able to buy these things, that's not included, because that's not called addictive. And it's not called addictive because someone's not going to be able to afford too much of it. And in the word zoilel, we see that it has to be relatively inexpensive things, relatively easy to acquire. It has to be raw meat and raw wine, and we'll see that doesn't literally mean raw. And is that so? Raw meat or undiluted wine is not something that's considered addictive, and he won't become a ben soyer more for it. Ravina, when we mean yain chai, we mean yain chai, which is mozig v'loy mozig. It's somewhat diluted, but not quite enough. And bosachai is boshel v'loy boshel. It's partially cooked. Kavasar kiba, like the basar kiba, which Rashi defines as raw meat that you put on hot coals. So it becomes singed right away on the outside surface, but on the inside it's still raw. The achla gamvi, that's what ganova meat, because they're in a rush. They don't have time to properly cook their meats because they're always on the run. Let's have a look at Rashi. Yain chai, mamshech, raw wine will be addictive because it's quality. Which we've already learned, it means b'mozig v'le'mozig. It doesn't mean mamish raw. It means it's somewhat diluted, but not diluted as much as normal, and that seems to be more addictive. Bosa yain mezig loy mamshich. 1 second. It's somewhat. Bosa yain mazig loy mamshich. But I guess if it's properly diluted, then it's not so addictive. Okay. Basar chai. Raw meat. It doesn't mean mamish raw. It means boshel v'loy boshel. The zuhi midas ganav l'maher. The goy has the ganav has to eat fast and run. Aval boshel shapir loy mimshech lemevet ka'agavna. If it's properly cooked meat, if that's what he ate, that's not something that's going to be addictive. If someone's the type of fellow who's makpid to have his meat cooked to perfection, he won't be able to be a ganav because he's not able to come and go so quickly. So basically, the defining factor is this something that could lead to a bad habit that he's going to continue? Cooking, if he's very makpid to cook his meat perfectly and properly, he won't be able to be a ganav because a ganav could never afford the time to prepare meat properly. And when it comes to wine that's partially diluted but not fully diluted, that's going to be addictive. But if it's fully diluted, it's not so addictive. Zog to Gemara weiter. Rabbi Yosef, the Amri Tarvayu, Achol Basar Meliach. He ate Basar Meliach. V'shasa Yayin Migitoi, or if he drank Yayin Migitoi, which I think is wine that's still in the process of fermenting, not fermented yet. The halacha is Ein Nasa Ben Soyer Moyer. Again, those aren't addictive types of eating, and therefore he won't become a Ben Soyer Moyer. Tanan Osam, we learned, we want to know what Basar Meliach is exactly. So Tanan Osam, we want to know what Basar Meliach is and what Yayin Migitoi is. Tanan Osam, Erev Tisha B'Av, Lo Yoichal Odom Shnei Tavshil. We know that on Erev Tisha B'Av, by the Sudas of Mafsekes, you're not supposed to have two cooked things. And V'lo Yoichal Basar, you're not allowed to drink Basar. And V'lo Yishta Yain, and you're not allowed to drink wine. So Zog to Gemara, B'tana we learned, Avol Oichal Hu Basar Meliach. You are allowed to eat Basar Meliach, because Basar Meliach, if it's salted, I guess it's salted to be preserved, that's no longer the Geshmaka meat that would be prohibited on Erev Tisha B'Av. V'shoyse Yain Migitoi, and Yain Migitoi again is not a good kind of wine that would be prohibited from drinking on Erev Tisha B'Av. Now the Gemara defines what exactly is that. Basar Meliach Kama. How long does it have to be salted for to be considered Basar Meliach that it would now be able to be eaten on Erev Tisha B'Av? Zok to Gemara, Amar B'chanini Bakana, calls a man Shahu Kishlamim. A shlamim can be eaten for 2 days and 1 night. If you salt it up to 2 days and 1 night, but not 2 days and 1 night, that meat still has the juiciness of the meat left in it, and it's still called basar that would not be able to be eaten in Erev Tisha B'Av. But once it's already salted for 2 days and 1 night, it's so dried out already, it loses its geschmack of meat. That meat would be allowed to be eaten on Erev Tisha B'Av. Now, this is the halacha l'gabei Erev Tisha B'Av. We're still going to want to know how salted does it have to be so that a ben Soyer Moyer eating it wouldn't be considered addictive. We're going to see what the halacha is about ben Soyer Moyer. But l'gabei Erev Tisha B'Av, if it was salted, like beef jerky, would be allowed to be eaten on Erev Tisha B'Av because that's not called meat anymore. It's not salted for 2 days. The salting that preserves it sucks out all the moisture from the meat. It becomes very dry and hard, and that's why it doesn't rot. So even though our meat might be held longer, that's because it's preserved through refrigeration. So it maintains its juiciness still. If it wasn't sitting in salt that long, it still is retained its moisture. It's not called salted meat, which is like there's a word for it where it's preserved. I forgot what the word for it is. Umesameach esalev. Sorry, cured. Yeah. Oh, so we have an expert. Umesameach esalev, and that will still make somebody happy. Cured meat was that? Oh, cured meat is not misameach esalev, but meat that has juice in it is misameach esalev. I know it's a misameach esalev. My doctor tells me all the time. My cardiologist tells me red gishmak meat is misameach esalev. Tichsiv v'zavachta shlamim v'yachalta sham v'samachta. There's a simcha in eating meat. Almu bar simcha. Aval basarach, he wants it salted for such a long time, it's so dried out and cured. Have a meliach v'nechlef taimoy b'milch. It doesn't even taste the same anymore. Okay, so that's what defines salted meat l'gabi Tisha B'Av. V'yai migita yad kama. How long does it have to be until it becomes wine? Kol zman shu toises. What does toises mean? Rashi shu noise begorain machmash shu machmitz. Noise, it stings your throat because it's in the process of fermenting. I'm not such a maven in wine tasting, but there's a certain point where until it's fermented, it stings your throat. But Tanya, and we don't in a brisa, I don't think it's a kasha. Vitanya, or Vitanya, that's what the dollar changes it to. Yayin toises ain't boy mishum gilui. There wouldn't even be the issur of leaving it uncovered, I guess, because it's not wine that even an animal would drink. The chama tisisasai, How long does this period take until it's wine? Shloisha yom. So again, when it comes to Erev Tisha B'Av, you'd be allowed to drink wine up until it's been fermenting for 3 days. Hachamai, when it comes to a Ben Sarah Meyer, what's considered moishech and what's considered not moishech? Is it the same as Lagabi, what's considered osir on Erev Tisha? As Rashi Hakamai, Akama loy karida and meliach lemifta b'tzerim moyer. How long must it be sitting in salt to say that when they've been Sarah eats this, he does not become a b'tzerim moyer? Zokmar haso mishum simcha. We know that the reason why you're not allowed to eat meat on Erev Tisha B'Av is because of simcha. And simcha is defined as 2 days and 1 night, as a shlamim is defined as simcha. So Hazar Mishum Simcha, Kolzman Shahu Kishlamim, Nami Ispe Simcha. As long as it's not yet salted for that period of time, we still consider it simcha. But Hacha, by a Ben Sarah has nothing to do with simcha. It's about, is it addictive or not? Is it behavior that's going to repeat itself? Hacha Mishum Mibshuchehu, Uvachol Shahu, Loy Mimshach. Even if it's salted a little bit and it's not sitting there for 2.5 days, it's enough. It's enough that it's not so geshmak anymore that it might be considered addictive. As Rashi says, even if it was salted over 1 night, so it's a minimum of overnight. It's no longer like geshmak of fresh meat, which would be addictive. This is not addictive. So if he's eating meat that was even salted for a small period of time, that would not make him into a ben tzara. The yain at mem yoim, and yain up until it's fermented for 40 days, it's still not addictive. It might be misameach, but it's not addictive. So there's a different set of rules for something that can be addictive versus something that causes symptom. Amar b'chanan, loy nivra yain ba'olam. So now we're going to go off on a tangent about wine. Wine was not created only for 2 reasons. A, to help people have a nechama, because wine makes you forget a little bit. It takes the edge off of life. L'shalom schar l'rishoyim. What does that mean? L'shalom schar l'rishoyim. Like Rashi shemis adn boy b'olam hazeh. They party hardy and have a great time drinking in olam hazeh, and through that u'mekabel boy schar mitzvah shoysim b'olam hazeh. The little schar that's coming to them will be depleted when they drink wine and they have the party in Hana from the wine. Shenemar tunu shecher la'oived, give wine to an oived, Rasha Hanu Rasha, shenitred v'haylach loy. We're basically letting him use up everything that he has. The yain lemore nefesh means la'avelim lefechuche tzarayu, to take the edge off of their tzar. So wine is made to help somebody deal with their tzaras, and the wine is also made to destroy someone who just has a couple of schusim left that we need to deplete. Amr Yitzchak, my dechsiv, altera yain ki yisadem. The pasuk tells us, I believe this is initially, altera yain to klamer altiteni necha lemoshech achelo. Don't let your eye draw you towards wine; it's going to make you red. What does that mean? Altera yain shemadim pneim rishoyim. It makes the face of a Russia red. You know, when someone drinks, they get red, they get rosy cheeks. But umalbin pneim lo'olam haba. It totally humiliates them in olam haba because they're not going to have any schusim. Rav Amar altera yain ki yisadem means altera yain shachri dam. It's only going to lead to blood. Soifa yehargalov, referring to a ben tzara murder. Don't drink too much wine; it's going to lead to your down. Rav Kahana Rami, Rav Kahana Arastira, Ksiv Tirosh. It says Tirosh. The Korean Tirosh. Tirosh means like wine, something that's an intoxicating beverage, but it's spelled without the vav. Let's look at the whole pasuk. If I could find where my my Torah Shalom is, it says, "V'yiden l'chalakim." We say this every week. Mitala shemayim u'mishmanei haaretz v'roiv dagan v'sirosh. Obviously, in a good note, it's saying that it's something that's good for us, but it's spelled Tirosh, although it's pronounced Tirosh. Zok to Gemara, Zocha Nasa Rosh. If you're Zocha, it'll be Tirosh. It'll make you into a leader. It'll enhance who you are. But Loi Zocha Nasa Rosh, which would be the Ksiv, it'll make you poor. It'll deplete you. Okay, Rava Rami, Siv v'yayin yisamach levav enosh. But it could also be read with a shin, yishamach, which is miloshin shoymema, which is miloshin desolate, and desolation and destruction. So ksiv yishamach, I'm sorry, ksiv yismach, or yayin yisamach levav enosh, the green yishamach, zocha misamch. If you're zocha in wine and you use it properly, it will make you happy. Zocha mishama meyu, it will bring you to desolation. The Haimud Amar Rava. Rava once said, Chamra v'rechne pikrin. You know what gave me my wisdom? Good wine that I drank and good sweet smelling spices that I smelled. So when used properly, they can be highly effective in improving one's intelligence. Amar Rab Amr Bareid Rab Shimon Bar Abba Amar Rab Chanina. My dechsiv. The pasuk says, let's read the whole pasuk inside. To Gishmak pasuk. It's also in Mishli. Lemi oi, lemi avoy. Who is the one who's going to be suffering? Oy vavoy. Lemi midjonim. To a person who fights. Abal machloikis. Lemi siach. To someone who talks too much and then gets into fights. Lemi pitsoyim. To one who's fighting. Chinam for nothing. And that could refer to someone who got into a fight for nothing because maybe he drank too much and he started getting a little bit too handsy. Lemi chachlul red eyes. Lema'achrim alayayin, to someone who spends too much time focusing to make sure that he's getting the strongest and best wine. Laboyim lachkar dagan v'siroish. I'm sorry, is it no? Laboyim lachkar mimasach, someone who's analyzing the mix and the blend of wine to make sure that he's getting just the right wine. Now, someone who's too interested in shikering. So we have this pasuk being dashed. Amar b'amar b'reid Rab Shimon Bar Abba Amar Pnina. Ma'is lemi oy, lemi avoy, lemi medonim, lemi siach, lemi pitzoyim, chinam, lemi pitzoyim, chinam, lemi chachol l'shanayim, lemi achem al yayin levoyin lachem b'mas. Ki asher abdimi Amar Amri b'marova. High kra. This pasuk can be dashed in two ways. Man de darish l'mereisha l'seifa midrash u'miseifa l'reisha midrash. So you could dash it from front to back and from back to front. So I read it from front to back. Who's the one who's going to get all into trouble? Someone who's too focused on his wine because he's too busy getting drunk that it gets him into trouble and therefore he suffers. But there's another way to read it, and that's who needs wine? Who needs wine? Someone who's suffering to help him deal with the suffering and to take the edge off it. Let's have a look at Rashi. Mereshel Seifa, Mandadarish Lareshel Seifa, Midrash, Nidrash Mashmusa Yofa. The pasuk will make sense. Who's the one who's going to suffer from all of these fights and injuries? Lema'achim alayayin, meaning levoyim lachem amasak. Someone who's too interested in drinking wine. Shechaykwin, they analyze laheichen ayayin toiv. We're going to get the best, strongest wine. Hamamusach bebesamim. It also makes sense. People who are suffering, someone who has red eyes from his laziness. They're the ones who need wine to deal with their plight in life. Okay, gewaltig. Darash Uvar Oiver Gililo. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. Is it Uvar? Is it Oiver? What's that? Oiver. Oiver from Galil. It was the name of an Amir. Yud Gimel Vovin Nemru B'yayin. In the story of Noach, when Noach got drunk and then Chum did something bad to him, there are 13 Vovin, and it's Meloshin Vei Vei, Rashi says. In other words, every one of these Vovin involved in the story of wine is Vei Vei, it's something bad that happened. So let's have a look, we'll count it. Va Yochel Noach Ish Adam, that's Vov number 1. Va Yita Kerem is Vov number 2. Va Yoshes Min Hayayin is Vov number 3. Va Yishkar, he got drunk, is Vav number 4. Va Yiskal B'Soicha Haloi, he exposed himself. David, this time it means exposed, not reveal. He exposed himself. That's Vav number 5. Vayar Cham Avi Canaan as Ervas Aviv. That's thank you. That's Vav number 6. Vayagid l'shnei echav b'chutz. Vav number 7. Vayikach is Vav number 8. Shem v'yafes. V'yafes is not one of the Vavs. That's part of his name. V'yikach Shem v'yafes. It's a simla. Vayasimu Ashchem, which is number 8, I think. Ashchem's name. Vayelcha Chayronis is number 9. Vayichasu is Erva Savim is number 10. Of name. Vayikat Noyach Miyeno is 11. Vayedes Asher Osaloi is number 12. So obviously I missed one, Benoyah Cotton, because it's supposed to be 13, right? I think I miscounted. Let's count again. Vayachaloich is 1. Vayitakerib is 2. Vayashas is 3. Vayishkar is 4. Vayiskal is 5. Vayar is 6. Vayagid is 7. Vayikach is 8. Vayasimu is 9. Vayelcha Charanis is 10. Vayichasu is 11. Vayikat is 12. And Vayeda is 13. Okay. Vayeda is also loy Benoyah Cotton. Some of the Vais are Vais he did something bad, and some of the Vais is look at what he's suffering for. Rav Shmuel Chad Omer Sirsoy. One man Omer says that Chom was Misaris's father. The Chad Omer Ravoi, he actually was Boyal's father. Man Omer Sirsoy, if you learn that he made that his father cannot have children anymore, when we talk shall kill since he was Makalkol's father, preventing him from having a fourth child, because he already had Shem Cham and Yafis, but now he could have a fourth child. Therefore, Kiloi B'Revi, it was his fourth child that was cursed. What does that mean? His fourth child was cursed. So Rashi says, Mitoich Shekiloi B'Revi, Shemanu Melahil Ben Revi, Kilel Ben Revi Shaloi, which is Cush, Mitzrayim, put Chanaan. So I'm not sure how you see that. It seems like the curse was focused on Canaan. The Mepharshim asked, why didn't Noach just curse him? He's the one who did something wrong. The Torah says because it says when they went into the table that HaKadosh Baruch Hu benched him, and you can't curse like a benched him. So it had to be his son. So he cursed his fourth son. Okay, so the Gemara is telling us Canaan was the one that was cursed. Zokt Gemara, if you just boil him, my shna revi, why would you just curse the fourth son? He should be cursed himself. Even if you learn he was Ravoy, you also learn that he was Masarishim. So the Machlekes isn't if he was Masarish's father or if he was Boil's father. The question is if he was only Masarish's father or if he was Masarish's father plus he was Boil's father. I did where? No. So let me go back. You're right. Rabbi Shmuel Chadam Meshizoi v'Chadam Ravi. Manam Meshizoi v'Tach Shekil B'Revi Kilo B'Revi. When the Ravi Gomer Vayar Vayar. Shavacha Vayar Cham Avi Chanan is Erba Shavim. Shavasam Vayar Oisha Shem Ben Chamor means it's referring to Bia. Bishlam the Manam Meshizoi Mishamochi Kilo B'Revi. The Manam B'Revi Maishna Revi Nelatya Behedja. Ha V'ha Havai. Vayachal Loich Ishu Adama. It happens often that I totally skip 3 or 4 lines and I don't realize it till later and no one corrects me, so please correct me. Vayechal Noach. I'm sorry? I want to say Vayechal Noach. I'm not about Koyer, you can correct me. Vayechal Noach, Ishu Adama, Vayita Kerem. And he planted a vineyard. Amar Abchist, Amar Avukva, V'amrila, Amar Mar Ukva, Amar Abzakai, Amar Lekadosh Baruch Hu L'Noach. You should not have learned from Adam Rishon. Shaloi garam loy elayayin. You know what took Adam Rishon down? Wine. So we're going to learn, obviously, command the Amar Isai Elon she'achal memenu Adam Rishon was gefen hoya. So you're planting the very same fruit that took down Adam Rishon and changed mankind. The Tanya, people kind. The Tanya Rabbi Aimer Isai Elon. Let's just look at this last Rashi. Ishu Adama. Am I currently Ishu Adama? Why are you referring to Noach as an Ishu Adama? Al Yidei Shoichicha Hakadosh Baruch Hu Hayilei Lilmoid by Ishu Adama. You should have learned from Adam, who was an Ishu Adama. Tanu Adam Rishon Shayayin Kanas Alav Misa. Misa came because of abusing wine. Weiter. There's nothing that brings crying to a person more than wine. Therefore, Yain prompted the most heart-wrenching cries. It was wheat. Until a child tastes dagon, he does not have wisdom. So it was an eitz hadas. We know that chita is associated with wisdom. It was a fig. What did they cover themselves with? They covered themselves with fig leaves. This is an interesting machlokes Rashi and Tosfos. Rashi says, the knife that he uses, the scalpel that he uses to give a makkah, humarapa. That's why they were saved with that's why their clothing was the aletena. Tosfos doesn't like that. Look at Tosfos. There's fire that's going to burn, but I'm going to be a firewall. I don't think there's any connection. Imagine the prince was mizana with one of the lowly shivchos. A maidservant. Even Shesham HaMelech, the Melech heard what his son did. Tardoi, he banished the prince from the palace. Now this son is homeless. He's wandering. Who's going to let him in? Who's going to give him shelter? He was knocking on the door of all the maidservants. At least maybe one of the maidservants will have mercy on him and take him in. The woman who he was zana with opened the door for him, and took him in. He was thrown naked out of Gan Eden, and he was very embarrassed. He was looking for something to cover himself with. Not one tree wanted to offer up a leaf to cover him up. They're going to die to the barrier. This is a ganav. He stole the das of the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Yad Rishayim al Tanidenu, Loisisabenu, they didn't want to help him. Aval Hataena, al Yidesha Achal Mimena, Pascha Lloyd Lasavik Hibaltoi. The Ta'ena says, okay, I'll give you a leave. I'll give you a leave, but then you have to leave, right? So that's what he leaves. So let's go right here. This is interesting how Shlomo Melech also went through a wild streak. It says in the pasuk, Divrei Lemuel Melech, the words that went to Lemuel Melech, which Rashi says Lemuel Melech is Shlomo HaMelech Lemuel, means Ma'isov v'chachmosoi lakadosh baruch hu. Lemuel l'shchinahu k'mo yodi something l'mapi. So what it's saying is the Melech is supposed to be focused on the Rebbeinu Shalom, Masa asher yasarta imoi, which means it's the musar that he got from his mother. Why did Shlomo Melech focus his efforts on the Rebbeinu Shalom to be an Erlich Hayid and to Steig? Because his mother, Bathsheba, set him right. His mother bent him over on the post to give him petch. Why? Zok Rashi, why did she want to give him petch? She saw he was a party-hardy prince who was having a good time. She gave him musr so he should grow up to be the Shlomo HaMelech that he was. The Amrullah, she told him, Ma bari, what my son? Ma bar bitni, and what about this person who came out of my belly? Ma bar nidri, and what about the person who came from my nether? What did she mean to say? And this is a pasuk that's quoted. Ma bari means hakol yodim she'avicha yori shemayim. Everybody knows David HaMelech is a gewaltig yori shemayim. And if I have a child with him who's a wild Baltaiva, they're not going to say it was from David's influence, because everyone knows David's a holy man. They're going to always blame it on my influence. So Mabri, what are you doing to me, my son? Uma Barbitni is, we know that it's beneficial to a Vlad for the mother to have relations with the father during the third trimester. It's beneficial to the Vlad. Now, most women in that state are not interested in relations, so they pack out. She did something that was uncomfortable for her, and she had relations. Why? To improve her son. They're out of there. They're not interested in having any relations. But I forced myself. And I came to your father to have relations to help you. So my son should be sharp and good. So I wanted to make you into a good thing. I'm sorry? Well, he wasn't behaving. So she was saying, I wanted you to be strong and healthy, not that you could indulge, but that you can use who you are and your looks and your strength for good things. Well, this changed him. Uma bar nidri. What do you mean? He was materialistic, but he was a chacham mikalado. He guided the Sanhedrin. Uma bar nidri. Kol noshim shel beis avicha. All the other women, you noidrois. And what was their nether? Yeheli ben Hagun lamalchus. I want a son who's going to be fit for a king. I didn't want that. Vanina darti v'marti Yeheli ben Zoriz umamula b'toira v'Hagun l'nevios. That's what I wanted. So al l'malachim l'mual, which is the next pasuk. So we darshan that as al l'malachim shesu yayin. Don't. That's the lashon pasuk. Al l'malachim shesu. Al l'malachim marmelo. She told her, don't hang out with the other kings who just indulge. Malach eitzal malachim. What business do you have hanging out with the princes who just want to indulge in themselves? Sheshoisim yayin and mushtakrin. The Omer, and they say lama lanu kale. So here, alam malachim l'muel, in the first pasuk, it meant that she pushed Shlomo Melech to force him to do everything l'shem shemayim. Here, alam malachim l'muel means don't be like the malachim. Don't be like the malachim who say lama lanu kale. Why do we need God? Let's just party hardy. Ularoiznin ishechar. What does she mean when she said that? Misha kol rozay oilam geluyim loy. Someone like Shlomo Melech, who will be chacham mikol adam, who will know all the secrets of the world. Yish dayayin v'yishtaker. Is it befitting and becoming for you to drink that way? To pastachnish. It's funny because that's how they tell you. You never put your child down. You say, look who you are. Sepastachnish. Build your children up. Don't push them down. In her case, it worked very well. The person who all of the Sanhedrin come to you to learn how to paskin on eating the nefashos. The greatest of the great are coming to you to learn. Yish yayin the yishtaker. Are you going to pour it all away and give it all away because you want a shikazich? And that shook Shlomo Melech up to the point that he became Shlomo Melech. How do you know that Shlomo Melech accepted this musar and he agreed to his mother that he has to get his act together? He said, I'm foolish for a man, so kibar noichim is minoyach. So I'm not going to be like Noach. I'm not going to drink. So he said, I'm worse than them. I'm worse than Noach and Adam. I was indulging in wine. So he admitted that what he was doing was wrong, and then he turned around, and then we have the Shlomo Melech. As they say, the rest is history. If he was drinking in the Chabur's mitzvah, that doesn't make someone into a Mitzrayim. The entire Chabura has to be lowlifes. Reikim Rashis, Reikim, lowlifes, they will drag him down. If there's even one good guy in the whole Chabura, he's not going to necessarily be pulled down and continue in his wicked ways. And therefore, now, we're even thinking about a Chabur, even if it's a Chabur that's a lav mitzvah that would cause him to be a ben Sarah Moyer, that's only if everybody in the Chabur is bad. There's one good guy, it's not an issue. In fact, is that true? Mitzvah, time of the mitzvah, a lav mitzvah, if it's not a Chabur mitzvah, it's a mashma abel gav the lav kulas shrikin. Even if they're not all bad, if it's not mitzvah, it's a problem. No. Hakamash Malon, the Avagab the Kulos Rican, even the Bemitzah Ka'azak Labimsha. If it's a Sudas mitzvah, even if they're all a bunch of lowlifes there, it's not going to be a problem. And if it's not a Sudas mitzvah, unless they're all lowlifes, it's also not a problem. Aval ochal be'ibur achodesh. Zok to Gemara, remember the boss of the Yain Masko. You tell me that the menu by these parties to announce that there's a 30th day in the month, they served basar and yain there. Vatanya in oidon ela bepas dagon, wheat bread, the kidneys and legumes bilvad. So there was no meat and wine served there. So hakamash malon avagav the ein oidon ela bepas the kidneys. Even that's what they're supposed to do, and they wrongfully brought in wine and meat. So you think that would corrupt the whole suda? V'yu asak basar v'yain v'yochal keep the mitzvah ka'asak le'mimshech. Tanu Rabbanan. You need to have 10 people there. Why? Because it needs to be a matzav. It has to create a buzz so that people will become aware that there is this extra day. They when did they do it? Not the next day, too late. The evening after the first day Rosh Chodesh is when they announced it. They don't go by day. Ela balayla only at night, because again, it has to be something that sticks out that everybody will know something weird is happening here. Must be to announce that there's Rosh Chodesh the next day. How could you tell me oil balayla and oil balayim? The Bryce says oil balayla. Elamayim. Dr. Gemara, no. Go in before it's dark. Go into this party a little early. You know why? Because if you wait till it's dark, people might not notice you're going in. Go in when it's still like dusk time, when it's still early enough that it'll be noticed. And also, also leave early. Don't wait till 10 o'clock in the morning to leave. Leave by daybreak. Because if you leave at 10 o'clock in the morning, they won't know you were there for the night before. They'll think you just went for a brunch. And that doesn't publicize Rosh Chodesh. People should know that there's something unusual here, and from there they'll know that there's an extra day Rosh Chodesh. Since he's eating it, means therefore it's not going to be addictive. Okay? What's the problem with those? Achal basar oif ein neinasa b'tzarim moyer. Basar oif is not, chicken is not going to make someone to b'tzarim moyer, dafka beef. I v'anantnan achal nevelos utreifos shkatzim u'remoshim ein nasa b'tzarim moyer ha tahir nasa b'tzarim moyer. It's mashma oif wood, because otherwise you should have said even kosher meat, that's not basar behema. Gemara ki tananami masnisin lahashlim. When we say eating basar oif will make you into a b'tzarim moyer, if it's all basar oif, it won't. But what if you ate almost a timur basar, but a little bit less, and you filled in a little bit with basar oif, if that would make you into b'tzarim moyer? Let's have a look at Rashi. Achal basar oif, tar is potter, deloy chashiv, deloy mimshech basrei. Now, what about shkachim u'mashim and the surim? How come they don't create the condition of a b'tzarim moyer? Stam shkatim, first of all, hanu oifish tameim. So right off the bat, the reason why the Gemara was asking a kasha on oifos from shkotzim is because shtam shkotzim refers to non-kosher birds. The chsiv by meshek etzem, remoshim and shrotzim. The little creepy crawly insects, that's referred to as remoshim. V'taima mishum deinenu shemeya bekeleinu ba'inu. What do the parents say when they're bringing up b'tzarim moyer? He doesn't listen to us. Not that he doesn't listen to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's only us that he's not listening to. So deinenu shemeya bekeleinu ba'inon v'loi zeh. So therefore, anything that's osir does not qualify. Let me just skip to lahashlim. Shafilu achar tetimer basar chosar kezayis mi behemet Torah v'shlima letartinar mi basar oifus temeim potter. So I'm wrong. The point is, even if you ate a little bit of basar oif, it would still be potter. Mishum de'enoi shemea bekoiloi shel mokai. The kavasa b'Torah mechayiv. Oh. So if it's basar oifos tameim, if they were mashlim the amount of meat, even with a tiny bit of basar oif tamei, it wouldn't be mashlim. But if you were mashlim with a little bit of basar oif tar, so most of what he ate was beef. He ate a little bit of kosher chicken. That in fact would still make him into a ben soyer umar. Zok to Gemara weiter av achol davar to mitzvah or udvar avera. Dvar mitzvah, what would that be? Tanchumi avelim. Some like a psuda for Avelim, and the Gemara means to say even if it's only a mitzvah midrabanan, v'araveris tainus sibur again, which is only midrabanan. The time of my amarkra einenu shema b'keilenu v'loy b'kel shel and the rabbanon is also considered not listening to keil shel makom. Achal kol machal v'lo yachal basar shasa kol mashka v'lo shasa yayin achal kol machal v'lo yachal basar lesuye devela ki'ilis. The vela ki'ilis was it was v'avogav de mishachar, even though it's a type of fig that will make you drunk. Loy mechayev alei. Why the loy mamshich? It's not something that's addictive. Shasa kol mashka v'lo shasa yayin lesuye dvash v'cholav, which can also be somewhat intoxicating. The tanya achal devela ki'ilis the shasa dvash v'cholav v'nichnas l'mikdash chayev. So you see that it could be intoxicating, but it's not addictive, and therefore someone does not become a B'tzar Meyer. We will stop here.